Hi there, this is Richard from animate.com, and this is a walkthrough to BalanceRun. The newest version is out, it's 2.0, and you will see that a lot of improvement has happened. I just want to show you a simple example at the beginning. It is a character consisting of boxes and spheres, so it's a primitive example. You see I move around a small cone, the red cone here. That's the only object that is animated in the scene. And on the left there is the menu of BalanceRun. I choose the cone as the follow target object and select the boxes as feet as well as the spheres as hip and chest. This will set up a character to follow the red cone, as you probably already know. But here you see that it doesn't restrict to keychains and bone setups and armatures. You can do it with arbitrarily objects that have locations and rotations. So you could generate keyframes for almost any object in a 3D scene. I'm hitting generate keyframes, and now you see how the character is following the red cone. Of course, BalanceRun, the name, how did it come to that? The basic idea behind BalanceRun is that the legs always just balance out the mass of a character. That's the case in standing, in walking, in running, in almost any motion a character can have with his legs. So I came up with the idea of controlling the animation for the legs just by the idea of balancing. Here we have a crab with 6 feet. Again, a target object is moved around, which is the only object in the scene that is animated. And before we start generating keyframes, let's have a look on the scene itself, because this is a more advanced character. And especially for those who are not that familiar with character animation, it might be confusing what BalanceRun is about and where it jumps in. This character was made with the skin modifier, so I simply extruded some lines and gave them some thickness with the skin modifier, as well as created an armature, which is the bones of this creature. I placed the bones on the scene layer number 2, and here if I select them, you see the yellow bones as well as this root bone, the blue one. The root bone doesn't have a parent, and this means you can control the whole armature, the whole character, by moving the root bone. I want to attach it to the hip, which is this sphere, and you can do that by adding some bone constraints, a copy location and a copy rotation constraint. So if I move the hip now, then the root bone will follow, and therefore the whole armature will follow. It's quite the same for the feet. They are driven with an key chain, an inverse kinematic chain, once per feet, to follow the small spheres placed right at the end of the feet. You just add the inverse kinematic chain and select the spheres as target objects. And at last there is the head, which is following the hip directly, so we don't have to mention the head itself. It's parented. So yeah, back on scene layer number 1, where the skin can be seen, the character can be seen. I select the target object, and selecting the target object already shows what I have selected in BalanceRun before, which are the feet and the follow target and the hip, just the way we did it in the primitive example before. Well, I could use the chest and some properties which shall be bouncing with the motion, but I'm not doing that right now. And don't forget that we have the skeleton on layer number 2. Once the timing is set, we can hit generate keyframes, and yeah, right away we see it bouncing around quite happily. So it's really happy that we are here and watching the crab, but I think it's a little bit too enthusiastic. That's because the strength is up to 500%. It means it's roughly jumping up 500 times higher than the hip is located on the z-axis. But that's just a rough explanation of what is happening. So if I reduce the strength to 100%, as well as set the bounce value to 25%, that's the general value of how much it shall bounce up and down, forth and back, and so on, then there shall be less motion, less bouncing motion all over the character. I hit generate keyframes again, and we see it's not jumping that much, but still it's very vivid and very active. I could reduce it even more if I reduce the bounciness to 5% or even lower to 0%. It's possible as well. But I won't touch the strength. I like the strength to be the same size as the weight of the character. I think that's a good start to work with. And you see, generating keyframes, the crab is quite calm now. It's not that enthusiastic anymore. Well, that's for the crab example. We see one leg penetrating the ground quite far. So let's have a look on how correct that one. I reduced the keyframes, so there are not that many keyframes to be corrected and replaced afterwards. Although the script is generating keyframes at each frame, after generation you can reduce them to the necessary amount of keyframes. This is not the case in BalanceRun 1.0, but I implemented this feature now. So you see, I just corrected the location, I pushed it upwards, and now the feet are fine. The next example is a little dinosaur. So it's a two-legged character, which will be, I guess, the characters we are animating most, because humans and monster, creature, demons and stuff, they always have 2 feet. As you see, the foot are now some meshes. That's because it's emitting particles, stones and dust. These require meshes to be emitted. And we're going to have a look on the ankle angle and the ankle intensity. That's how much the foot is rotating during a step and in what direction it is rotating. Again, it is following an arrow, which is the target object. So let me delete the particle systems. We see the hip and the chest again on layer number 2, as well as the whole armature. So we take a close look. I just turned the ankle degree to plus 90 degrees, and now it looks like sneaking around, meaning that the tip of the foot is the first thing that is touching the ground. That makes the walk like a sneaking walk. The second thing I'm trying now is to place it to minus 90 degrees, and now the ankle is the first thing that is touching. So it looks more like running instead of sneaking. Underneath we have the ankle intensity. What does that mean? Well, as the foot is rotated during a step, and the ankle degree above is the preferred angle of the foot, it isn't the angle it has permanently. Furthermore, for a natural motion, the foot should rotate backwards when it's lifted and forward before it is set down. So to make a natural impression of walking. So on the one hand we have a preferred angle, on the other hand we have a natural motion which kind of is like a sine curve over the angles over time. And the combination of them will be the final rotation that the foot is spinning while lifted. And the ankle intensity is simply the amplitude of how much shall we see this rotation. Like a robot wouldn't have a foot rotation at all. And with the ankle intensity, you simply set the scale of rotation. Well, that's the ankle intensity. Now let's have a look on the particle systems. I'm checking stones and dust and generate keyframes. The stones will be emitted on lifting the foot, like the stones are pushed out of the ground when it's pushing away from the ground, when the character is pushing away. They have keyframes between lifetime 1 frame and lifetime 15 frames, and they're set to follow the gravity in Newtonian physics. The dust instead doesn't follow gravity, stays for 75 frames and is emitted on lifting the foot as well as setting down. So there is more dust than stones. These are just raw and simple setups for particle systems because they highly depend on what you want to achieve in your scene, especially the design, how they shall look like. So I just set the keyframes for emitting them, and everything else shall be done by you. They're set as halos for the beginning, which only will work in Blender internal render, and so on. So you will have to design the particles yourself. So let's head on for the next example. Here you see a small robot that has 3 legs. And this means that BalanceRun works fine with an odd number of legs as well. You could choose 3 legs, 5 legs and 7 legs to be odd. And I just want to demonstrate that the algorithm is not based on symmetrical anatomy of the character. Right. Here I try to achieve a more natural look of running to see the capacity of BalanceRun. Again, I spread the helper objects and armatures on the other layers of the scene. I will place the arrow, the target object, back to layer number 1 so that we see it with the horse together. The tail and the head are moved with property objects. If you have a look on the left of the screen, there is the BalanceRun menu, and you see a lot of controller objects at the hip, at the property 1, 2 and 3 that control the bouncing of the body. And what is happening here, we have, it starts to run up a ramp. So there is even height control of the ground, which is pretty amazing because you just have to lift the arrow above the ground. As soon as the set value changes, the set value of the target object changes, the character will think that the ground is higher than it was before. So moving characters up some steps or up a hill is very easy just by moving the target object up. So lifting up the horse on a ramp, you will have to have the exact same height between the foot and the target object as you had in the start frame. So you see that the start pose the pose of the character at start frame is crucial to the motion of your character. And oh, what do we have here? One of the legs is pinning up in the air. So this foot still thought that the ground is high as it got lifted. That's good for steps, but it's not good for falling down. So here we have to control to correct that. Let's just see. I can't find it. Here it is. Yeah, that's the foot, right? No, wrong one. Okay, foot number 4. Let's have a look at the dope sheet where the keyframes can be deleted quite easily. First I zoom in to the time period and then I look for the right, let me size it up. I look for the right foot, here it is. And you see a bunch of keyframes. It's really a lot to animate. This is the work done by BalanceRun. I just deleted the keyframes for the last step of this foot, but still it's up in the air. I think that's the last key I didn't delete right here. Yeah. Let me check that and delete it, and there we go. No pinning. Right. So we have seen even how you refine your animation. I hope everything is clear now. And you're looking forward to let your characters run in arbitrary direction. Here you see reducing keyframes is really wise, because as long as the foot are staying on the ground, you don't need keyframes since they are not moving. And a lot of keyframes had to be set to make this animation, which really shows how crucial and how helpful BalanceRun is for character animation. Let's try something else. I increased the strength of the horse, so make it a stallion, a more powerful horse. But this is just experimental because I just increased the strength and not the weight. I guess it will be very enthusiastic again, like the crab was in the beginning. Let's have a look. There are particle systems as well, so we doubled the particle systems now. And yes, it jumps up and down, and whoa, that's far too much. It doesn't counter the ramp. So you see, it's very experimental. I should increase the weight as well, then it wouldn't jump that much. And that's not a stallion, that's more like My Little Pony. Yeah, the tail was made with cloth, so that's why it doesn't follow right now, because I need to bake it again. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough and see some features and their use for your character animations. And I'm very looking forward to get your feedback for further improvement. And please feel free to comment, feel free to contact me. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Yeah, that's it. This was Richard from animate.com. Please be sure to check out Silas, my feature film I'm working on. It's releasing soon. Silas.com, and check back. Have fun animating. Bye.